like to call this July 9th, 2024 Board of Education meeting to order. Mr. Anagnostou, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Ms. Cobain?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Here.
Ms. Stachek?
Here.
And Mrs. Hausum?
Here.
We are all present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our district has developed and is currently engaged in a 3-year strategic plan, which reflects the values, beliefs, and hopes of our students, staff, parents, and community. We have 4 strategic priorities: transforming teaching and learning, aligning staff and resources, cultivating culture and climate, and leveraging funding and facilities. And all the decisions we make as a board and an administrative team are measured by those goals. Next is OSBA student achievement. Do we have OSBA student achievement?
Yes,
we do.
Excellent.
Yes, we do. Tonight, since we haven't been in school and we don't have teachers and students, Haley and I thought we would do something a little different and surprise some of the people that we work with all the time. The first Extra Mile Award we want to present goes to George, our treasurer. George has been at Strongsville since 2015. George, I found out a lot of things about you. George served as an executive director for the Cleveland Metro School District, where he managed a $732 million general fund budget and prepared the schools for 5-year forecasts. While he has been at Strongsville, we have received the Auditor of State Award for 5 straight years. And these entities that receive this award must meet several criteria to make a clean audit report. We're very proud of George and what he's done for the schools. Also, while George has been here, he has won the 8th straight Meritorious Budget Award. The Association of School Business Officials have recognized Strongsville City Schools for their excellence in budget awards. I want to thank George because for the last year, he has listened to us and our constituents, and he's never gotten frustrated, at least with me. And I don't know a whole lot about budgets, I'm going to be honest, but I can call him at any hour, and he tries to explain, and I see that he's constantly explaining it to our constituents, and I'm very proud. And the best thing about George that I see is he is a man that just has a lot of humility and integrity, and I really don't think there's anything better than that. So I'm proud to award him our Extra Mile Award from all of our school board. Thanks, George.
Well, thank you. This was a surprise. Wasn't expecting it, but thank you. Just always try and do my best and represent the district and the community and put the district in a good light. So thank you.
Doing very well.
Thanks.
Now, we need to take a picture. Hold on, George.
You also have to shake everyone's hands too, so.
Yeah, you need to shake your...
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Stole your job, Jenny. No,
1, 2, 3. Congratulations.
Go ahead, shake everyone's hands.
Congratulations. Yeah.
But wait, there's more. So they always say that a woman can do anything a man can do, but in 5-inch heels, right?
but there's someone around here who not only does everything a man can do in fabulous high heels all the time, and looks great doing it, smiles all the time, and is exceptional at what she does. But she's here, and we get to have her as a part of our Strongsville community. She oversees human resources. She does staff mandatory training, labor relations with the association leaders, recruitment, onboarding, and retention. She takes care of substitute teachers, FMLA leaves, compliance, student enrollment staffing, hiring, coaches, advisors, employee grievances, discipline, job descriptions, oversight of employee evaluations, evaluations of all principals, staff licensure, and Department of Education compliance reporting. She also oversees staff development. She sees the oversight of professional development planning for all staff, leading Model Mustang development and deeper learning integration, creation of district learning team, oversight and support of district instructional coaches, leadership of multiple strategic planning objections, planning and facilitation of administrative development meetings. I mean, she does a lot. Coaching of assigned building administrators, developed and implemented a podcast to support staff in their understanding and implementation of the Model Mustang and deeper learning. Other highlights include leadership role on statewide committee to plan the annual conference and support women in leadership, selected to present in state and nationally. She's not only born and raised in Strongsville and has spent a majority of her career in Strongsville as a Spanish teacher, assistant principal, and assistant superintendent, but she does all of this while being an absolutely amazing mother to her 3 children. For that reason, we would like to thank Jenny Pelko for being our star in high heels of Strongsville.
I'll just say thank you very much, and it's my honor and privilege to be a part of this community and be here for so long and do all of the things that they shared. It's really a joy every single day, and I'm just lucky to be surrounded by great people to work with as well. So thank you.
Photographer's ready.
Ready to go.
Go ahead, shake everyone's hand. So at this point, we were going to call our next witness to the podium, and it was going to be a child from Moraski, but she had a private tumbling lesson, so she's not able to be here today, but she did send me her testimony via video message, so I'm going to play it, and if you can't hear it, I apologize, but...
We have a really funny story to tell. We were at the Strongsville Home Days when we ran into Miss Haley and we told her our concern. When we buy lunch, if you get the regular jumbo chicken tenders, you get 2. But if you buy the spicy chicken tenders, you get 3. And she texted at 8 o'clock at night, Mr. Ryba, and he answered and said, "Those are really cute kids. I will look into it."
So Dr. Ryba got a lot of street cred that day when he answered my text message at 8 o'clock at night at the Strongsville Home Days from wherever he was, saying that he was going to look into it, and he did. And their moms went home and told everybody in the development they thought it was the greatest thing. So we see emails come from him at 5 o'clock in the morning. We see emails come from him at midnight. We see, like, there's so much you don't even see that he does, that he thinks about and puts into our district. But that right there was just kind of one of those things. If he could have said, you know what, gosh, what does this Haley girl want again? I'm just going to wait till morning. But it was about chicken tenders and kids wondering why they got more spicy chicken tenders than not spicy chicken tenders. And he promised to look into it, and he did, and he talked about it, and they appreciated that. It made them realize that this isn't just somebody that we don't have access to, someone that doesn't talk to us, someone that cares about things that are concerns in our lives as elementary students and as these parent students. So for that reason, we would like to acknowledge Dr. Ryba at this time. Funny enough, they all kind of, well, I don't think you knew about it, but they all kind of thought we were acknowledging each other and didn't realize we were doing it to all of them. So, Dr. Ryba, we would like to acknowledge you and thank you for everything you do at this time. wait, we need a certificate.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, get your certificate. You don't want to leave your extra
That's
mile.
right.
Yes. Yeah, you can talk.
Well, yes, this wasn't part of the plan, right? You were, well, that's very kind of you all, and I'm glad my legacy will be spicy chicken nuggets and the work that we did there. But as my colleagues have said, like it's been a joy to be here for all the years. I think this is, I don't know how many years, like 20-some plus years in Strongsville, and this is the longest job I've ever held. So I was a teacher for 4 years, and now this is year 10 as superintendent. So it's a joy to work with all of you and to be a part of this great community. So we don't do it for the recognitions, but I truly appreciate the thoughts and care. So thank you very much.
Welcome aboard. Congratulations.
You gotta tell us about the nuggets now. Did you write it? Yeah, what's the deal? You gotta tell us about the nuggets.
Oh, it was, I fought tooth and nail to get those equity and
nuggets.
chicken nuggets done. As a spicy chicken nugget person, we got to make sure they're equal for everybody. Yeah.
This was a major concern. They saw me and they were like,
Yeah.
you're on the school board. We have this question we've been dying to ask you that our moms wouldn't let us bother you about. And they asked me.
So please tell me the fix wasn't that everybody gets 2 chicken tenders.
I don't remember anymore what I did.
They didn't complain about it afterwards, so it was
No.
fixed. Whatever it was, they were happy.
We're good. The
So-
nuggets are good.
I do remember my wife saying, "Who is texting you at this time, and what is that about?" And I said, "It's Haley, and it's about chicken nuggets." Problem solved.
Of course it is.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
And that's all for today. That concludes our report.
Well, I will just say I thought that was just lovely. It was a surprise to me, and but well earned, well deserved, and here. Next on our agenda is Strongsville High School Division I state qualifiers. Coach Koval and Principal Wingler.
Yeah, come on, just come on. I'm going to speak for 12 seconds. No, Coach Cole, you guys know, those of us who are track guys, been a track guy forever. This guy's got an incredible history of success. And I knew him as a parent of track kids before I got this job. And once I got the job, I realized it's all genuine, it's all real. In the spare time we get, which isn't a ton, sometimes I'm in his TBT at the building. We often talk about track, driving the other teachers crazy, because not a lot, other than Miss Housam, not a lot of us like to talk about track. So just when he gets up and talks about how great the kids are, I want everyone to know that this guy eats, breathes, sleeps, like this is his life all the time. He's got charts on his desk of performances that are crazy. So I'll let him introduce the kids, but the kids he's introducing is because of what a great job he does.
Did he run here?
I did not.
Looked like you did, though.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You guys could all come up. I'll introduce you as I talk about you, but you get to stand here with me. They love this part, standing up here, all awkward. You can see you. There we go. All right. I usually type up a big presentation, but I feel like I've worked with these guys now for so long, I could just roll with things. So I have some stuff written down here. So I'm going to start with Jack. Jack was our only boy state qualifier. I'm going to go all the way back to a year ago. We started training as soon as the state meet ended last year, and he wanted to get better, and he wanted to add to his resume of things that he does, and so he talked to me about possibly competing in college as a so a decathlete, and so I thought that was something that was possible. So we learned long jump this year. He was our best long jumper, 20-foot some jump. He learned high jump this year, and he was our best high jumper. I believe 6'2" was the top out there. He was our best 110 hurdler, best 300-meter hurdler, and arguably one of the best pole vaulters in the state that didn't get to compete at the state meet. But we'll get to that. So then moving forward into the indoor season, Jack Jack qualified to the state meet in the 60 hurdles, which is the 110 equivalent indoors. And he learned a very valuable lesson that day, and I think it's something that stuck with him the rest of the year. He false started, and that's the one thing as a coach you never want to see and never want to hear that gun go off twice. And unlike the Olympics, we don't get a second chance at it, so that was it for his day. But he learned something that day, and I believe it stuck with him the rest of the season, and he had something to prove, and he definitely competed like he did that. So now I'll flash forward to our postseason. So we get to our conference meet, and Jack did something that I don't know if we've ever had an athlete do before, but he scored 40 points at our conference meet, which is a tough meet. Scored 40 points. That means he got first place in four individual events. So he did it all individually. He was first place in high jump, first place in pole vault, first place in the 110s, and first place in the 300s, leaving a very upset Menor kid crying because of the way that went down. But Jack definitely did that. So in conclusion of all of that, and the girls already got theirs because I see them every day, Jack earned MVP of the conference for field events, and I probably could have made the argument that he was also the MVP for running events, but someone else got that. But so that's yours. And then because he got first place, he got gold medal for all of those events. So congratulations with that. And now the state meet, we get all the way down. He entered in those 4 great events that he was pretty good at, and slowly dropped out. Bad day to have a bad day in pole vault. It's how it goes sometimes. And ultimately got to the state meet in the 110 hurdles and finished 11th, which is pretty good time. Probably not what he wanted, but I know now he has something else to prove next year. So that'll keep us working, and that'll be that. So congratulations, Jack. All right. Up next, I had all these great stories. Our 2 seniors, they're ready for college. They're out of here. I give up on trying to convince the seniors that they still need to come to these things. Actually, that one's yours. I think you have Bryn's in there. All right, so I'm going to talk about these 2. So Lindsay, you are up first. Lindsay is our freshman, a freshman state qualifier. That's incredible. And there was a minute there where at the regional meet, she was one of our best 2-milers, and she was running the 2-mile at the regional finals. And for a second, well, it was a little bit longer than a second, I thought she was going to squeak in and get the 4th place spot. Turns out she was 5th, but commendable regardless. But still had that 4x8 to hang on to, moving on into the state meet. She was our number 4 800-meter runner. She ran a 2:26, which is amazing for girls' times. 11:31 in the 2-mile. She was our number 3 miler as well. So she has that range to be a really good long-distance kid and also a really good short-distance kid. And she's only a freshman. So the bar is set really high. So I can't wait to see how she improves. So that's Lindsay. So, and again, 4x8, and I didn't mention this, but the 4x8 team chiseled their name into Strongsville history, breaking the school record that actually her coach Aubrey was a part of. So it's cool to see coach coach the kids into a record-breaking 4x8 time, which was incredible. So congratulations to Lindsay, and I have a certificate here for you guys as well. I'll give you those at the end. All right, Hannah. All right, Hannah is a 3-event state qualifier. She had a tough decision to make as a freshman. Came into Strongsville as a soccer player and had to decide between soccer and cross country, and she chose soccer. So she made one mistake, but that's okay because the next year she corrected it and decided to be a cross country track kid. And I know how much she loves soccer, but I definitely think she made the right decision here because not only did she chisel her name into the record books for the 4x8, but she also has the school record in the open 8 of 212.83, which I know she will probably break that again. She's going to have a couple more tries at it. She has a school record in the mile, breaking the 5-minute barrier, going 4:59.09, which that's fast. So she's got those two school records. She's our top 400-meter girl in our relay. She broke 59 this year, got into the 59s this year. And then she took it one step further after the state meet. I should probably talk about the state meet, huh? So she got to step on the podium in the 4x8 in 5th place. And they were fighting. There was a battle there. She could have been anywhere. We could have been anywhere from 3rd to 5th, and we ended up in 5th there. Great spot on the podium that way. And then she came out and ran the mile and ran an amazing time and got to walk all the way up to the number 4 spot at the podium and get her pictures up there on top of the podium that way. And then she decided to take it a step farther, and she competed at the New Balance Nationals in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago. And things are a little different there. It's a higher level playing field, and they start differently, and I think that threw her off a little bit, and so she didn't get the start that she wanted, but still competed at an incredible time and ran a 2:14 there, so just a couple seconds off her school record, which is also incredible. So big future of our program, all underclassmen, so I'm excited for that, and congratulations to all 3 of you. So thank you, and thank you to the board for letting me do this. I'm excited that I get to do it every year. So thank you very much. All right. Congratulations. Now you got to walk the circle. Thank you.
What will it take to watch us?
Congratulations.
You guys listen.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. That's going to be a fun race. You racing them.
There's no race there.
I think that might be the last time ever.
So I will just comment that I think a lot of us are watching the Olympics and getting excited for the Olympics, and there have been the USA trials to see who goes to the Olympics. I think we have our own Olympics right here. When I hear, high school record, that's special not just for the athletes, but for everyone. It's exciting to see young people set their mind to something and then accomplish it. And then it's really exciting, I heard there were a couple of freshmen, a couple of sophomores. So it's fun for us to start to recognize names. And thank you for being the examples you are. Thank you for showing younger Mustangs what they can do if they set their mind to it. And thanks to the parents for entrusting their children to us. So thank you again, and congratulations. Next, we have a donation. Dr. Ryba.
So be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that a donation in the amount of $30,532.35 be accepted from Architectural Justice, a gift of materials and labor to renovate the concession stand at Pat Catan Stadium. And this does require a vote.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Do you want to give a little of the details, Dr. Ryba?
Sure. So spoke to some folks, I think it was around winter time, that Architectural Justice was interested in partnering with our SIM, our Strongsville Instrumental Music Boosters, on a project to renovate our home concession stands at Pat Catan Stadium. So did some work behind the scenes to see if that was a possibility. And there's Brad over there. Brad Nadell is a community member, parent in our district, also an employee of Architectural Justice. Has been great at being patient and working through all of the details with us. But, we have so many great community partners that are looking to give back and be a part of our district. And Brad and the team at Architectural Justice have, put up $30,000 plus of materials and labor to, as we were just talking before the meeting, it will probably be the best concession stand that's in this area. I've seen the architectural renderings, and I'm excited to see what it will end up being. I know there's been some labor also by the music boosters to do some painting, I believe. as well as our maintenance crew to get electric and lines all in the right spot. So it's an exciting opportunity for the district, and I'd also like to give a public thanks to Bob Serpentini, who was gracious enough to allow the last year of his rights to that concession stand to be given to another group so that we can have that investment, and we will give him another portion for another naming portion for the last year of his agreement. So it took a team to work together, but it's going to be a beautiful facility for not only our music boosters, but for our community and visitors that come to the stadium.
I just, on behalf of the school board, just want to take the time to let Brad and pass on our thanks. This is just outstanding. It's another example of some of the things that we can do as a community, especially when lots of people come together for the benefit of our students. Friday Night Lights is a tradition, not just in Strongsville, but in the country, and this just lets us enjoy that a little bit more. And all I can ask for the public is come to our games and sample some of our wares at the concession stands. Any other discussion? Hearing none, George, would you take the roll?
Ms. Stalchek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
And the motion carries. And once again, thank you, and please pass our thanks on to everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Next on our agenda is public comment. I do not have any slips. Is there anybody who wishes to make any public comment? Hearing none, I think we can take a pause. I know there isn't homework, but there's probably track and field practice of some sort. So if anybody wants to escape, now is a good time to do it. Our meetings are public and they're open. If you would like to stay, you are more than welcome. Coach Koval, don't you want to stay?
Thank you.
Have a nice evening, everyone. Next, we come to approval of minutes. Approval of minutes for the June 27th, 2024 meeting. All video and audio recording is a permanent part of the minutes. We now come to our Board of Education category, and our first thing for discussion is a resolution declaring it necessary for an additional 4.9 mil operating levy. A resolution declaring it necessary to levy an additional tax for the purpose of current expenses and requesting the Cuyahoga County Fiscal Officer to certify the total current tax valuation of the school district and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by an additional 4.9 mil operating levy for a continuing period of time pursuant to sections 5705.03 and 5705.21 of the revised code. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? I would like to start the discussion. And at our last meeting, when we were discussing how to move forward, I started by discussing a press release by Auditor of State Keith Faber. And I actually have reread the entire press release a number of times, and I think the press release is very timely for what the decisions we have to make. So I do want to take the time to quote some of this, of the press release. Fiscal responsibility isn't optional when it comes to managing public finances. This is especially true for our school districts, which are entrusted with the vital task of educating our children. Taxpayers hand over their hard-earned money with the expectation that school administrators will use funds wisely and sustainably to provide a quality education. Anything less is a breach of trust. Effective school finance requires disciplined budgeting. Every decision must be carefully considered with the district's current and projected financial realities in mind. Administrators need to balance short-term needs with long-term financial stability to continue providing quality education for years to come. And he ends with, the buy now, worry about paying for it later mentality is not uncommon, but it can be disastrous. Other educational institutions in Ohio have made similar mistakes and found themselves in financial straits. These short-sighted decisions have far-reaching consequences that ultimately harm the very students these districts aim to serve. When districts overspend and can't pay the bills, it's the students who suffer. Programs get cut, teachers get laid off, and the quality of education goes downhill. That's unacceptable. And he concludes, it is crucial that school administrators, and I will add school boards, prioritize fiscal responsibility in our public schools. Sticking to disciplined budgeting practices and carefully considering long-term financial implications will ensure that our schools remain solvent, stable, and capable of providing the high-quality education that our students deserve. And like I said before, I probably read this 6 or 7 times over the last couple of weeks. So this is a big decision that we have to make as a board. It is a change. We have, as I've discussed before, we have gone to the voter 2 times. Our message has not resonated. The voter has not supported renewing an existing levy. To continue to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is one definition of insanity, and I don't support that. So we do have to consider what should we do. And so at our last board meeting, the 2 things that we considered was, 1, to ask the community to convert this to a continuing levy, which I recognize will be a big point of conversation. Many will say we're taking the vote away from the taxpayer. The response from me is that this is a pragmatic response. We are the only school district in Cuyahoga County that has 2 renewable levies. Let me be clear, 2 renewable 5-year levies, which means every 3 or 2 years we have this conversation with the community. It is an expensive conversation. To do this 3 times will cost the district over $100,000 that we will send to the county to pay for the administration of an election. So while I personally and publicly support the idea of the tax-paying voter having a say in our finances, it's also a matter of, is it pragmatic? And is it reasonable to ask the voter to make one of these levies continuing? And I do think it's reasonable. I had the conversations with George. There's a lot of what I like to call levy voodoo, and making this one continuing versus the next one continuing has benefits to both the district and the taxpayer. George, do you want to highlight the difference as far as the state contribution?
Yeah, so with the other levy, sorry, I don't know why this keeps changing. It's not set on anything. With the other renewal levy that we have, it was originally passed in the 2000s sometime, I can't remember the exact date, but it was, at the time, there was homestead and rollback credit for the homeowners. It's about a 12% reduction off their tax bill. That was phased out on any new levies after, I think around 2017, 18, around somewhere in that point, somewhere around that time. So this levy passed in 2019, so it doesn't have those credits that the other levy has. So if we would change that levy to a new levy, it would lose those homestead and rollback credits to the homeowners. So by keeping that other levy as a renewal levy, it still has those credits to the taxpayers and the state reimbursements that and the difference is the state gives it to us back in a state reimbursement.
And again, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of the inside baseball of how levies work in the state of Ohio, but we did consider that. We didn't just say, let's convert one. We said, if we're going to consider converting one or none, what are the consequences? And that's one of the reasons we're asking for the consideration of the voter to convert this one. Again, I started my comments, we are the only district with 2 continuing levies. In fact, the majority of districts, 2 renewing levies, I said that wrong. In fact, the majority of districts in Cuyahoga County have no levies for renewal. It is they're passed as continuing levies, and when an individual district needs additional funds, they continue that pattern. And there is no question of, are they renewable? So I think it's reasonable, I think it's pragmatic to suggest that one of these is converted to a continuing levy. The other discussion we have to have is on the millage. In the millage, we're going to reduce to 4.9 mils. This is the first vote. Assuming this vote passes, George will send the language down to the county, and the county will determine how much tax that 4.9 mil will collect. It will collect less than the renewal levy because of House Bill 920, and because we're replacing with a new one, it will be based on today's house values. But some of the rationale for me and for the board is that, again, we can't just keep on doing the same thing over and over again. However, we do have sexennial reevaluation coming next year. Many of you have already seen in the news that our property values in Cuyahoga County will increase. Then there's a formula to determine how much your property tax will increase or decrease or stay the same. But at the end of the day, the district will receive a modest increase in overall taxes because of this reevaluation. House Bill 920 mitigates that so that it's just not my house went up 30%, my taxes go up 30%. Right. That's not how it works. House Bill 920 adjusts that. From a property owner standpoint, that's considered a good thing. When House Bill 920 was first passed, it was during another period of high inflation in the 70s, and it was a response to people's values rising 30, 40, 50%, and you can't expect a homeowner to have that commensurate increase in property tax. We are in a very similar environment today. While currently we are expecting a moderate or increase in overall property tax, there is a lot of activity in Columbus because for many homeowners this will be a difficult increase. The increase affects rural districts differently than city districts, differently than suburban districts. But there are different laws that are being considered to increase the homestead deduction, to create a deduction or a credit for senior citizens, people on fixed incomes, people with low incomes. All of this will somehow trickle down to the school district. What's important for me is that we're not going to receive some massive windfall. There are districts in Ohio that will receive a much larger windfall based on changes in property value. But again, we will receive an increase, and so I think it's reasonable that we reduce the millage. And I think it's pragmatic. I alluded to it the last time. I always have 3 part test for taxes anytime that I as a board member have to vote on taxes. One, is it needed? And I go back to what Auditor Faber stated. Our job as a school board and as a district is to educate the students of our community and to do it in a wise, thoughtful, pragmatic, and long-term sustainable manner. And so I do think a 4.9 mil is reasonable. I anticipate we will have a lot of conversation about that. I anticipate we will have a lot of cynical conversation about that. But I'm comfortable that 4.9 mil is needed. The second part of my test is it reasonable? I mean, we could argue all kinds of needs, but if it has a undue burden on the taxpayer, it's not reasonable. We are reducing the millage. It is a reduction in the tax from what the renewal will be. We'll find out what that reduction is. At the end of the day, we're not talking about an increase. So I don't see how it wouldn't be considered reasonable. And then the last one is can I promise my neighbors, can I promise the taxpayer, we won't waste your money? And I think that goes to the heart of what we're doing. It goes to the heart of the last 13 years I've been on the school board. It goes to the heart of what everyone's doing. We are not wasting the taxpayers' money. Every decision we make, we always balance with what is necessary today and what is sustainable. So I think, for me, I'm supportive of that. The next question is, should we cut it in half, or should we reduce it, or what have you? And that goes to the sustainable question. We could do that. But then the things that we are reasonably and assuredly proud of in this district would start to erode. And so when George and I had our conversations, we discussed all the various scenarios. And some of you might be familiar with some different personal finance gurus, but there's the idea of a snowball effect. And if we cut this, whether it be to 7 million, or we cut it in half, or we cut it in any fashion drastically, it's okay now. It's okay in a year. And then the snowball continues to grow. And we go from deficit spending. Currently, our deficit has closed from 9 million. I'm sorry, our carryover is closed from 9 million to 5 million. We will be deficit spending in the next year, year and a half. And then every year after that, that discrepancy grows. To lower this, the consequence is the discrepancy gets big, and it gets big fast. And so the analogy I use is we're using a 5-year timeline. To generate $100 in 5 years, I can either invest, save, spend $20 a year, or I could cut it in half and only spend $10 a year. But in year 5, I need to come up with $60. And that, to me, is just financially unreasonable. And I don't know how I support that as much as I would like to. But being cynical, what I would suggest is look at our finances. Don't look at the award that we gave George. Look at the reports. Look at the reports. Look at the history. This district is in the best financial condition it has been in the last 20 or more years. And I, as an individual board member, want to continue that. And that's why I'm comfortable with this decision. I think it's reasonable. I think it's pragmatic. It does lower the amount of taxes that we're asking, which I think is a pragmatic response. In exchange, we're asking to convert it to a continuing levy, which again, I think is reasonable and pragmatic. And I say to the cynic, we still have that other renewable levy that is going to have to be decided on in less than 2 years. So if you think we're doing a good enough job, approve this and keep your cynical hat on and continue to make sure we're spending your dollars wisely, and know that if we don't do what we say we're going to do, you have the opportunity again to let us know. I've said enough. I've said what I wanted to say. Is there any other comments?
So we won't really know how much anyone will save until, is that what you're saying, George sends this downtown, and then they let us know how much,
It'll be
how they calculate it? Is that what you're saying?
correct. So they will, and George, piggyback when necessary. This resolution goes to the county. The county determines the current value of all property in the city, and then applies 4.9 mil and comes back with a total tax. It will be less than $9.8 million, which is what the renewal is. It will be more than $7 million.
So we're somewhere in between there.
We're somewhere in between.
It'll be around 9.2.
Correct.
And what would it be if the renewal levy went through at just the regular renewal level?
About
9.8.
So we're going down a little bit, but we're not going down
700,000.
much.
Correct.
George, I just wanted to ask you to remind us in the community of the process that it took to get to tonight and the language we have here, and then the process to continue to get it on the ballot, so we understand the timeline and where we are right now.
Right. So, working backwards, the deadline to file is August 7th by 4:30. Prior to that, you need 2 board resolutions. The first resolution is to request the county to certify. The county certifies the dollar amounts, and the second resolution is to accept their certification and then move forward by putting it on the ballot. So in order to do that, it takes 2 resolutions, 2 board meetings. So looking where we're at, we kind of drew out that process of this board meeting, we would have resolution 1. Our August 1st meeting, we would have resolution 2, and then we would be ready to file by August 7th for the Board of Elections. And even looking prior to this board meeting, we had the last 2 board meetings as discussion items where we talked about the renewal levy or this levy itself. So we had those discussions, those last 2 meetings.
And this, to get this language, where do we get the language for today from? In the
Our
resolution?
attorney.
The attorney. So we had to
attorney
run it
drafts the
through the
resolution,
attorney.
and then afterwards, once I get the certification back, I'll send it to our attorney who would draft the resolution for the.
For the second.
For the second
as
one.
well. Okay, so, thank you.
We'll open it up. Got to go to the podium. I'm offering a public comment period since nobody else used the earlier public comment period.
I appreciate
Name and
that.
address for the record.
Brett Tomford, 20640 Kelsey Lane, Strongsville. For this resolution, are you able to do more than one at the same time? You do one for 4.9, 4.2, 4.1, or you can only do one resolution at a time? I'm just curious.
Yeah, we could do
We could do more than one.
more than one.
Okay, just wondered.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. George, would you take the roll?
Ms. Stochek,
Yes.
Ms. Cobain,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell.
Yes.
and the motion carries. We will have much more to discuss in the meetings to come.
When you said we can have more than one resolution, I didn't understand that. What do you mean? Like, we could just vote on, like,
We could have had a menu of resolutions
Oh, okay.
and sent all of them down because you have to have those 2 votes. But it's our job to plan ahead of time and determine what we think is the best decision and not just have a Chinese menu.
And we can't do it right now either, because we would have had, the lawyer would have had to have drafted the thing, so we could have instructed him to do that last meeting. But not as we sit here, because that decision was already made. We already gave the direction to say, this is the one we want drafted.
At our last meeting, we discussed what we wanted to vote on. We discussed all the different options. We, played the what-if scenarios. I have been we have all been playing. I've been peppering our treasurer with what-if scenarios, and he has a good calculator, and then he just says, here's the calculator, Rich, you can do whatever you want. But a lot of what I do is not, try to figure out a millage amount. What I do is I look at the 5-year forecast, and we have triggers in our cash balance policy that says if we have less than 90 days of cash on hand, it is time to have the conversation with the community about an increase in our revenue, an increase in the community's taxes. So what I spend my time doing is saying, how can I reasonably extend that amount?
Right.
And one of the reasons we're at that 4.9 mil is to drastically make changes to that means we're coming back for more money later. The analogy is that $100. Do I save $10 a year and have to come up with 60 in year 5, or do I save $20 a year? And this is an example of saving $20 a year. Next on our agenda is Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Micco. I have a few items for your consideration tonight. The first being establishing petty cash change funds for fiscal year 25. This is an annual item where at the end of the fiscal year, I'll just pull up the exhibit. At the end of the year, these locations return their petty cash, and at the start of the next fiscal year, we reestablish those. Our fiscal year ends June 30th and begins again July 1. So this is reestablishing for fiscal year 25. The recommended action is be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the petty cash change funds in the attached exhibit be established. These funds are used to establish startup funds for fiscal year 24-25 school year. The next item, G2, fiscal year 25 temporary appropriations. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the temporary appropriations for fiscal year 25 be approved. What changed from the last meeting to this meeting was the SEF grant that was accepted at the last board meeting for the National Math Conference. It was added to the appropriations for $2,576. And then lastly, item G3, I talked about this at the last meeting. We approved this at the last meeting, but also as I mentioned, there was going to be a revision for the athletic streaming, for the athletic live streaming. So be it resolved upon the recommendation that the treasurer that the athletic event prices for fiscal year 24-25 school year be approved as presented. This is an update to include the live streaming event prices, which are found at the bottom of the exhibit. Single event is $12.50. One annual pass is $195.
And not that live streaming isn't great, but it's really hard to go to our new concession stands if you live stream the game.
Right. And then lastly, before I conclude my report, as Mr. Micco mentioned during the levy conversation, the county Cleveland.com put out an article yesterday regarding the sexennial reappraisal for Cuyahoga County. Strongsville is somewhere between 28 to 32% increase. This was something we've talked about when I did the 5-year forecast. We've included it in the 5-year forecast in March. In the assumptions for the forecast, we included about a 27%. The forecast is linked to the webpage under Treasurer's Report, but just a couple of things that I wanted to note as Mr. Micco was mentioning about how the tax rates work. I have a few slides in there on how House Bill 920 works. As the property values increase, the tax rates decrease, and then over time you can see how the values increased while the tax rates decreased. This increase here is for the 2019 levy, but the last big increases in valuation, you can also see a corresponding decrease in tax rates. And then this is projected increases. So for this projected increase that I had 27%, it decreases the effective rate by 18% overall. And then in 2027 is a triennial update. So every 3 years, either triennial or sexennial. The triennial is based on 11% increase. So that reduces the tax rates again in 2027. So those increases are were projected into the May forecast. And then you can see on the next slide, as Mr. Micko talked about, where some areas may see a bigger increase than others. And the reason for that is as the tax rates decrease, they can only decrease so far. It's called a 20 mil floor. Once you get to that floor, every increase in valuation is a true increase. This top line is our current voted rate. The gray line is our effective rate, while the dotted line is the floor. And as the rates continue to go down, we get closer to the floor, but we're not there yet. So just kind of highlight that with the news regarding the tax update, or the appraisal update. And with that, that concludes my report. If there's no further questions.
Any questions for George? Again, congratulations on your award. Well earned. It's a major award.
Great.
Got some tough critics for it, so yeah.
Next on our agenda is Superintendent's Report. Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. We do have one discussion item, and it's a continuation of a discussion we've been having for some time here on our student drug testing policy. So probably a little over a year ago, the policy committee started a potential discussion on a policy about student drug testing. The policy committee referred that to the entire board to have a discussion, and we brought that probably after the first of the year, January, February 2024. We had a talk, and the board at that time gave me direction to do some focus group work, talk to our stakeholders, and see what the views are of our parents and our staff. And so we did that. I looped back in May, reported the findings from that. The board gave further directions and questions that they had, really getting into the specifics about what this would look like. And so in between May and now, continue to address some of the questions from the board, as well as reach out and spend some time with a few companies that provide this service to learn more about the services that they provide. So joining me today from Great Lakes Biomedical is Kyle Preeter, who had a conversation with, and should the board move forward with a policy on student drug testing, Great Lakes Biomedical is the company that I would be recommending to the board to take on that service. So today at this discussion item, a couple things that we'd like to talk about is to, first of all, take a look at the policy. We have a draft policy and see, do we have consensus with that? If we have consensus and want to adopt that today, we can. If we want to do and put it on the August 1st agenda and possibly waive readings, since we've looked at it for almost a year now, we could do that. We want to talk a little bit about the drug testing approach, and we'll talk more about that later, about how we want to actually go forward with it if the board wants to adopt a policy. We want to talk about what students would be in the pool of being randomly subject to drug testing. And then there's a variety of procedural pieces and the nuts and bolts of it that basically there I'd be looking for, as you've reviewed this, are there any red flags or things you have questions or concerns about that we need to talk about further? And then ultimately, if considering this seriously, what would be the estimated start date? If you have a specific one in mind. So with that, I'm going to ask Kyle to come to the podium and give an overview of what student drug testing looks like in schools, as his company provides this service to, I think, 160 school districts.
Just about, yeah.
So I'll turn it over to Kyle, and we'll have a dialogue. And please, I've had a conversation with Kyle via email and over the phone, and a wealth of information, so please feel free to ask questions as we go throughout.
Thank you.
Thank you. First, let me apologize a little bit in case my voice goes out. I had a little laryngitis last week, so maybe it'll come back. I don't know. So, well, my name's Kyle Preeter. I'm the owner of Great Lakes Biomedical. We are a drug and alcohol testing company. We've been around since the mid-'90s, and we currently are servicing about 160 schools throughout Ohio and Michigan. The first thing that I always like to go over with drug testing is, what's the purpose of this program? Is it to catch kids and, gotcha, you're off the team, et cetera, et cetera? No. It's all about prevention. It's all about, like Saturday night, when kids are together doing things that kids do, and someone says, hey, you want to hit my joint, vape, whatever, it gives kids one more reason that night to say no. No, we get tested, let's do something else. Boom, right there, that's the program. It will also help reinforce your other prevention efforts. It's not a standalone program. It's got to be with the community support, the school support, and your other programs. And the biggest thing that it will do is help you identify kids that are struggling and all the peer pressure and everything that they're being subjected to. It gives them that one more thing, one more reason to say no. So, if you would Google student drug testing, you'd probably get about 1 million responses, about half for, about half against and such. If you're looking for empirical evidence to back up your program, I suggest you could look at the Hunterdon study, the Saturn study, Ball State study. There's all sorts of different studies out there if you want the empirical evidence. But I say there's a list of schools that we are servicing in the back of your packet there. Feel free to call all. They'll tell you what it does. And again, it's not going to eliminate drug use from your schools, but it is going to help change the culture of the school, which is what you want. I also like to go over a couple myths that I always hear first thing with drug testing. The first one is, well, there goes the football team. All these kids are not going to come out for sports, et cetera, et cetera. And my answer to that is, nope, it doesn't happen. But don't believe me. Again, call some of the other schools that we service, find out what their situation is. I have not heard of a single school that has actually lost kids in participation. It just hasn't been happening. Another one is most students and parents are against drug testing. Surveys that were done not by us, but by other schools, kind of in your situation, you throw a survey out, we ask for some of those responses. And typically about 85% of parents are for the program. And what I found really interesting is about 50% of the students were for the program. I kind of thought it would be like 2%. Leave me alone, I'm a kid. But no, we've had some parent meetings, and it just made me feel good. Some of these students would come up and say, you know what? If you're going to do a drug test policy, I get it. I sometimes feel like I'm being punished because I know that some of these other kids are not doing what they're supposed to, and maybe the second part of that is, and they have my spot on the team, and it's like they're being rewarded and I'm being punished, and you know what, if you're not doing drugs, it shouldn't be a problem. And I've heard that time and time again from the students, not all, of course, but it's refreshing to hear, from the kids, that they're actually for the program. So, let me go over just real quick how the program works with us. There's a number of different ways you can do it. There's voluntary programs, there's mandatory programs, there's what we call draw the line programs. So I'll just briefly go over them and how they work. Voluntary programs, we have a number of schools that do like a drug-free club type thing, and basically kids sign up, and when they sign up, you give them some perks and such, and they're part of the drug-free club, and they often use that to pad like their resumes and such when they go into the workforce. It's a good program. It's volunteer. You typically will get between 10 and 20% of students participating in that. The second one is you can just simply do randoms. If you do randoms, I suggest that you do at least 50% of your population, because you know how kids are. They're invincible. If you don't have a big enough percentage, they figure, it won't be me, I won't get picked. So you need to get at least above 50%. We have a number of schools that actually do only randoms, but they do even more than 100%. It's just the way they want to do it. The program that's actually the best, I call it draw the line. It's mandatory, whatever way you want to say it, but in this program, you will test everybody, like at the beginning of the school season. For example, you will give an announcement that August 15th is drug test day for football players, cheerleaders, et cetera, et cetera. Now, a lot of people will say, you're telling them the date? They're just going to go clean themselves up, to take the test. And my answer to that is, yeah, isn't that great? You clean them up for the test, and then you do randoms afterwards to keep them clean. But more importantly, again, remember, this is supposed to be helping kids. is the self-referral. All policies that we do typically have a self-referral, and a self-referral is like a one-time get-out-of-jail-free card. Okay, you can't use it every time you get picked. You can't, keep using it, but it's one time for like your high school career. So what happens is, and I can't tell you numbers, I can't tell you like how many or anything, because they don't do it to us. They go to your administrators. So day before the test, day of the test, kid will come up and say, hey, coach, I don't need to take this. I'm not going to pass. Well, think about that for a second. That kid's what, 15, 16, somewhere around there? You've told them the testing date, and now they still can't clean themselves up. So you have potentially identified someone that has a serious problem. And you don't want to turn them away, say, well, gotcha. Yeah. No. With a self-referral, what you typically do is say, all right, here's your choices. You do need to get assessed. We need to see, exactly where you are in this, how serious this is. And after the assessment, though, we want you to stay. We're not going to hit you with the, typically your program, and you'll get into that later, has like a 1, 2, 3 strike type thing. You're going to miss 20% of your activity if you get a positive. A self-referral, you don't do that, because again, you don't want to turn kids away. But you know what? You're going to stay here. You're going to practice. We're going to get assessed. We're going to get through this. We want you to be part of the team. We want you to be part of the family. Let's go. If you don't want to do any of that, we understand. Well, then you can't play. So again, we're here to help the kids. And again, I can't give you numbers, but feel free to call the various schools. They'll vary and such, but see how they have handled that. So let's kind of go into the details of what it looks like, because drug testing at school, that sounds complicated, scary. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of money and such, which that's another myth. Drug testing is super expensive. We can do tests under $20 a test, so they're not like hundreds of dollars and such. So we will do all the work for you, basically. Let's talk about just a simple random at this point. We've already done the draw the line, if that's the way you want to do it, but it's time for a random test. We will have 1 or 2 designated people that we will talk to in your school. I point that out because confidentiality is, the biggest thing that we have here. So if another teacher, secretary, kid, or anybody say, hey, what about the test, whatever, we will only talk to who we are supposed to talk to. We will, one of our technicians and schedulers will get with that person and say, what's a good time and date? Okay, next Wednesday at 8 o'clock? Great, we'll be here, actually 15 minutes early, and get everything set up. We come right to your school. We set up right there, bluing in the toilets and, all that good stuff that you got to do for drug tests. The kids come down, we test them, we screen it, and then off they go. So it's very quick. When we're doing big tests and we have the big bathroom, we can do 100+ kids per hour. So it's not, that's one of the first things I did when I started this. Like teachers and parents, like, well, we're here for reading, writing, arithmetic. What's this drug test stuff? So you can't have it be like an all-day affair. So we want to get kids back and get the teachers back too. So once we get the time set and everything, we come right to the school, set everything up. When the kids come down, let me do just a quick scenario. My name's Johnny Smith. I'm a student. I was called down to the designated area, so I come down and a drug test technician is there. If it's the larger bathrooms, there might be a drug test technician of the same sex in that bathroom, but in the sink area, we'll never do direct observation, ever. But they're in the sink area, so it's like you go over there, you go over here, put your cup here, et cetera, et cetera. If it happens to be a random in a single stall area, we stay outside and just, you go in there, provide the specimen, come back. I come up to the front desk. We normally have like a little table up front before the bathrooms. My name's Johnny Smith. They called me down. Johnny, yes, you're here for a drug test. I look on the roster. He's number 13, so I will give him a cup with a number 13 on it. So, Johnny, we just need a urine specimen, half a cup, don't flush, don't run any water. Bring it back to me. Johnny goes and does that. Whoops, sorry. Brings it back and signs out Johnny Smith, cup number 13. Off he goes. That's it, as far as the student goes. What we do is we'll take that test or that specimen there and we'll screen it right on site. If you send something to a laboratory, the first thing they do is screen it, and that's how they make all their money. It's like they screen it, oh good, it's negative, throw it away. We do that on site, and our hope is we'll screen everybody, go to our designated person and say, hey, everybody's good, we'll see you next time. Or sometimes it's a little different. What if we get a non-negative? It's not a positive yet, but it didn't screen negative, so I can't say, you're good to go. We will then take that specimen with the proper name. We'll use like 013 Strongsville as their designated number. They have to have like a special number on there. Package it up, same thing as like your bus drivers. Send it to the certified lab. They'll put it to the gas spec machine, and it'll have the digital fingerprint of whatever that chemical is. Let's say it's amphetamines, for example. It'll come back saying amphetamines, great. They'll come back to us. We'll run it through the medical review officer. That's a physician that specializes in drug testing. And it's like, here's what it is. They'll call the parent at that point and say, hey, Mrs. Smith or whoever, Johnny had a test a couple of days ago. Is there any medication? And I go, well, on some ADHD meds. Great. Could you either give me the number or take a picture? Nowadays they have all of that. All they got to do is take a picture of the bottle. There it is. And the MRO will take a look at that and go, yep, that does it. Now he's a negative test, and we will respond back to the school that it's negative. Now that took a few days. Had to go to the lab, had to go to the MRO, had to talk to the parent. And what do you do with Johnny during that whole period of time? And the answer is absolutely nothing. He probably doesn't even know any of that's going on until mom says, hey, did you have a drug test a couple days ago? Because the doctor just called. So as you see, lots of checks and balances, and everything falls on the side of the student. Now just very quickly, the other scenario would be do that whole thing, non-negative for marijuana, for example, goes through the whole MRO and the lab, then we will contact the parents, unless for some reason you do. We only have like 1 or 2 schools that have the school contact first. They like it when we do, because we get that first call, And we'll contact the parents, and there's really not a whole lot to say about it, because even though marijuana is now legal, it's not for the kids in your school. The age isn't right. And then we'll let the parent know, get that first little bit of shock gone, hopefully. And then we will tell the school. And at the school, then you'll go through your policy, which basically typically says path A and B, like I tell my kids all the time. Please choose A. You need to get assessed, like I said before. See where you're at here. And you are going to get dinged, like, let's say 2 football games, for example. But we're not kicking you off the team. We're not saying you're out. Please stay. You're part of our family. We're not going to tell anybody about it. They probably will, but the student will be the first one, but that's beside the point. And we'll get through this. You just won't actually practice. You'll still suit up and all that. And then we'll move on. Great. Oh, you don't want to do this? I understand. We won't make you, but you can't play. So it is made to help the kids. And typically, again, policies are kind of a 3-strike thing. So they do it again. Same thing, 50%. They do it a 3rd time, and you can choose 3rd, 4th, whatever you want. And it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, but you are out. Because now we got to start looking at the parents and the kids, the other parents and kids, like football and wrestling, and especially the contact sports. Like, I don't really want somebody that's on drugs and such hitting somebody else, or some contact like that. So again, as you see, lots of checks and balances, but everything goes back to the student. Ultimately, if a parent doesn't agree with the test, I even put out there that it costs like over $100 to do, but because the labs do it, I say, I will send that same specimen, always the same specimen. I won't take one that you went to your family doctor a week later and got that same specimen, send it to another lab, and if it comes out different, I'll pay that. In the last 3 years, we finally had some parents do it. Before, it was always, they would just talk about it and then never do it. Now we have some parents doing it. We've had about 5, maybe. Each and every time it came back exactly the same. But I want that secondary thing out there, say, look, if you think that lab, I don't know, poured marijuana in your specimen or something, we'll send it to another lab and get the result from there. So that's pretty much how the program works in general. There's lots of little ins and outs and everything, but that's pretty much it.
So thank you, Kyle. I think that's a good pause point to turn it over to the board before we get into our discussion items to see if you have any questions for Kyle, who lives and breathes in this world all the time that can answer better than me.
Thank you, Kyle, for making the time to attend our meeting. Are there any questions for Kyle? Kyle, you said you think I forget the phrase you used, but testing everyone is the best way. Why do you say that?
Well, if you do only randoms and do it properly, there's a good possibility, I gotta quit leaning, there's a good possibility that some students just will never get picked. Okay, when you do the draw the line, really the most important thing of that is, well, two things. You are going to get tested, so this summer don't just, hey, I'm going to keep partying, until the day football starts. No, that's not good for you, and marijuana stays in your system for like up to a month if you're a chronic user. But the self-referral where they actually could get some help. We're coming into a time right now, I'm predicting, and I don't like to be a doomsayer or whatever, but pot's just recently legal here. But we can look at other states and see what happened there. You're going to get more positive. We've already got more positive since Michigan became legal. The positives just go up, meaning kids are younger and starting to do more drugs and such. So, and we're finding it more and more, both pot and nicotine too, because vaping is, all the big thing nowadays. So it gives an opportunity then that you are saying, look, this is happening and you can't pass it. Okay, it's not a big punishment like, ha, gotcha. It's okay, great. We understand there's a problem here. Maybe you're just making stupid decisions. Good, we need to decide that too. But maybe you're seriously got some problems and such. I remember back in the day when I was young, it's like, oh, marijuana, you can't get hooked on marijuana. No, it's not addictive at all. That's what they told us. And well, of course, nowadays the pot is about 100 times stronger than back in my day too. So it's a different thing. Yes, they can get addicted. It gives them an opportunity to get help is what it's really about.
And then the only other follow-up question, when I was looking into this previously, there's different kinds of testing, and you're recommending the urine testing. What is the consequence of the hair testing or the other kinds, and do you have an opinion?
Question, because there's hair companies come around and say, we're the best. And it's like, no, you're not the best. So here's how the three tests work.
What are the three tests? What are the three tests?
Yes, and I'll go over each one. And I got to say it, urine is the gold standard. I've only got like two jokes.
Thank you.
But it is. Truck drivers, bus drivers, and it's been around longest. And frankly, it's not really the easiest, but it's one of the easiest. So, urine. Here's a good example that I use. You see an employee, or you think you see an employee smoking pot in the parking lot, okay? You bring them in, and let's say it was their first time using, okay? So that's all we're talking about. We'll bring them in, give them a urine test. Nope, won't show. If you wait 5-6 hours, it might. So it takes a while for that to go through. And then if it was only their first time, 3 to 7 days, it'll probably be out of the system. If you do saliva, saliva's really easy, but saliva goes to blood. So if you bring them in and do saliva, you'll have to wait, 15 minutes or so. It will show because it's right then and there. But 8 to 24 hours afterwards, it's gone. So what you did on Saturday, it's hard to do. Now, hair can go back up to 90 days. So hair is really more for chronic use, though, because in that situation, first off, you would have to wait about 10 to 12 days to test them because the hair is underneath the scalp, and it has to come up. And then if you cut low enough, et cetera, et cetera. It's also made, like I said, for chronic use, so if you do it one time, it may not show. So that's kind of the different scenarios and how each one works. Hair is not the best, it's the longest. Urine is kind of like in the middle there, it kind of gets a bit of the longevity and also you don't have to wait as long. And then saliva is really for pretty much immediate use. We do use saliva sometimes as an alternate for urine because, again, we don't want to have kids like, we know that legitimately it's like, they're calling them down and that one just came out of the bathroom. It's like, So you could have them sit for hours and whatever, but what we do is give them a certain amount of time, and then there's the option that they can go to like saliva. Now, in addition to all of those things, we can test for basically anything. But what we do is in our 5-panel, 10-panel, et cetera, let's just talk 5-panel. It's kind of the standard, because it kind of mirrors the drug test for bus drivers. Marijuana, cocaine, and opiates. They're basically always going to be in there because that's what we get all of our positives for. It would be great to test your kids for everything. You can't afford it. So what we do is we take the other drugs and we'll rotate them around. And if you call us because you're hearing, hey, meth is just running through our county, meth will be on it. Otherwise, we'll rotate for you. So that way, the thing that I never want to do is, like, that's why you might notice in our policies, we never specifically say just exactly what the drugs are. Because what if we didn't specifically say heroin, for example? And then it's like, well, I'm doing some pot, and I'm not saying that's okay, but I'm doing some pot. They're going to, ooh, heroin. Maybe I'll try that. You know, I would never want to be responsible for pushing somebody into like a different type of drug. And as you also know, there's a million different types of new ones out there. The one I do want to touch on, though, alcohol. Kids will know that if I pound down a 6-pack on Saturday night and you breathalyze me on Monday, it won't show. And they're right. But we have a test called ETG alcohol. I won't do the whole name, it's too long. But it'll go back up to 80 hours. It's a little bit more expensive just for that test. But again, we do it cafeteria-wise. You don't have to just like, here's the drug test, and that's all we got. It's like, no, you can add that on. We don't tell the kids anything that we would add on. So this time you might be doing a 5-panel with meth and oxy, and next time you might be doing a 5-panel, and let's add nicotine. And next time, this problem's going to be like last weekend. Let's throw in alcohol in there too. So you have the variety. The kids will never know what we're testing for, because again, I don't want to say, oh, we're testing for this. So I've seen some companies say, here's our list of what we test for. It's like, oh, really? Yeah. I got a whole nother list of really bad stuff here that they can get pretty easy, and I don't want them to use that list.
So the 5-panel literally means 5 things we're testing for?
Yes,
Okay.
5 categories, I guess, would be the best thing. Like when you do opiates, there's all sorts of different, opiates and everything. And so, yes, it would be like the 5 different categories. And to be honest, marijuana first, maybe nicotine. It's kind of between the two. Some cocaine, and then the other drugs, they're not very prevalent right now, but we do get them. I've had heroin down to 7th grade, which by the way, another little aside that I'd like to throw in there, most schools do like the high school program, but most of our newer schools now are also doing junior high. But you don't want to spend the same amount of money. And we know from past experience, we've been around long enough, we made the mistakes. We had one school that did junior high and high school all together. Here we go, we're going to do 30 kids. Wait, 25 are junior high and 5 are. So what we do is we put your junior high, if you choose to do that, into a separate category. So let's say we're going to do 50 kids, like great, we're going to do 5 junior high, because they can use that too. So, Saturday night, they're getting hit with vapes and everything else, just like everybody else. But then the rest of them would be for the high school, so you're not kind of putting too much money in the wrong place.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Kyle. So going back to the discussion points that we wanted to talk about, let's first talk about the board policy, and that's in the board section of the agenda, to take a look at the current draft. So if I just kind of talk about the highlights, Kyle did a nice job about talking about the reasons behind that, right? We want to provide, well-being for our students. We want them to remain drug-free and give them another reason for students to refuse drugs. And if we find kids that are using and need help, we want to provide those services and help to promote more healthy lifestyle and life choices. So besides the kind of why behind the policy, our policy, again, is supposed to be big picture, set the guardrails for what we want to do, not get into the specific details. That's for some guidelines and procedures that we've outlined in other documents. But first of all, as Kyle said, we are recommending in our policy that the pool be grades 6 to 12. So middle school and high school would be the students that would be in that, and within that, it would be students that participate in athletics
participants are students that participate in extra and co-curricular activities. So to be clear, that would be any club that is there, any music group that is there as a co-curricular. Those would be in the pool, as well as students that have a parking permit with the district. So anybody in grades 6 to 12 that meets one of those criteria would be in the pool. As Kyle said, we would supply all of those students to Great Lakes. They would assign them a number, and they would be in the pool. We'd have to update that, throughout the year, so that's there. So that's the first part about the policy. The second part goes into talking about what happens if we get a positive test. So going through Kyle's example, the lab gets it, it's a non-negative, they do further testing, and it says, no, this is an illegal substance that's there. Our 1 or 2 people that are the liaison are informed that. What would happen? And so our policy says that the student would not be suspended or expelled from school for a positive test, and nor will they be penalized academically at all, nor will it be put in a student's academic record. Any of the consequences would be related to the activity or parking or sport that they're in, and we have a 4-part system that I've recommended as a part of our guidelines that go into this. The consequences would be, with regard, as I said, the athletics, extra or co-curriculars, or the parking permit, and the policy says I will establish procedures to address all aspects of this, which the board has seen a draft of what those procedures would be. The one caveat to the policy is saying this policy does not supersede reasonable suspicion that we have in school. So if we have reasonable suspicion and search a child and they have paraphernalia, we find that they're under the influence, that's different than drug testing. There would be school consequences as a part of that. So this is just simply for if you get a positive test in a draw the line pool or a random pool, that's the highlights of the policy. So I'll turn it back over to Mr. Micko for any discussion or feedback on the policy as it stands right now.
I have just one thought, and we'd have to look at the numbers, but my suspicion is that the vast majority, at least at the middle school, of your participants in the pool would be from athletics. We don't start athletics at the middle school until 7th grade. Is there an argument to be made to not start this also until 7th grade when there's going to be more equity in the testing than there would be in 6th grade?
So just to share my thoughts on that is we do have, because the board approved additional clubs at the middle school, we do have some 6th graders that would be in the clubs. So yes, it's not going to be a vast pool. I would say one of my greatest concerns right now is middle schoolers and their experimentation with usage. I shared a parent update right before the end of the school year that we had serious concerns about pocket in 7th grade. So yes, I think that's up for discussion just because of the sheer pool. But again, if the idea is that you are in the pool, it could be random, that again, will it help students make healthy choices? I think we would have to kind of assess that after a year 1 implementation to see student perception of it. But, I would think based on the legalization of marijuana, the access that kids have more access to marijuana-based products than they have ever had. The marijuana-based products are, 20 times more, whatever it is. I think was THC levels were 2 to 10%. Now they're 20%, I think I've seen lately. Just the dangers that has on kids. I would recommend, even if it's a small pool, that we would keep 6th grade.
So I think I'm supportive of the policy. I think we can, there's some wordsmithing that we want to do so that we can bring it back to the next meeting and have our readings and get this adopted. I'm supportive of an expansive approach. One of the things I'd like to make sure we have in place is, we need to respect privacy. We need to respect parental decisions. But what I'm very concerned about or invested in is doing this for 1 year and then seeing what the results are. as far as how many positive tests, et cetera. Right now, we have a lot of anecdotal evidence. We also have some non-anecdotal evidence. We have existing suspensions, expulsions, et cetera. We currently do the locker room searches, I think, 3 times a year, and we always, unfortunately, find students that are abusing drugs. But I'm really curious to see what the results are. At the end of the day, I support the provide for health, safety, and general well-being of students. I support encouraging students to remain drug-free and provide a legitimate reason for students to refuse drugs, and encouraging students who use drugs to participate in treatment programs. But I think this is a pilot program, and the same way the policy sets the framework and the goals, then we can come back after a year and say, is it helping? Because I don't want to just have a drug program that has no benefit other than a bureaucracy. But, we wouldn't be considering it if we didn't, acknowledge that there is a problem in our student body that should be addressed. So let's address it and see in a year how we should adjust it, whether it's, we don't need to test 6th graders, or surprisingly, it was a good result that we did test 6th graders. So that would be my feedback. And then, the rest of it is, I really think Principal Wingler and Toloni will empower them to make this a tool to help students.
I think it should be everyone, though. I don't think there should just be random testing. I don't think that's going to solve anything. Were we talking about either everyone or
Draw the
randomly?
line? Draw the line. So
Yes, right.
you have at least
Yeah.
once a year, it is across the board. To be clear, we can only do this for extracurriculars,
Right.
et cetera. We cannot, it is illegal, illegal.
Right.
It's unconstitutional to just say we're testing the entire student body.
No, I meant everybody
Right.
in that area, yeah. Because I think randomly, you could miss the same kids like over and over again, and I think that would be a waste of time and money.
I just think that, again, let's draw a plan, follow it for a year, and then I'm sure Cameron will bring us a report and we'll adjust where necessary.
So just to be clear on consensus of the board, we're good with the policy. We have a policy committee next week, so we can, if you have feedback on the wordsmithing or the tweaking, please share that with me, Haley, or Michelle. We can talk about that and then share it with the board, and we'll have it on the August 1st agenda for vote, or however the board wants to process, whether it's waiving readings or whether it's going through the 3 readings. You guys can give direction on that. Sharon mentioned the draw the line approach, go that way of testing all students that are in that season or in that area, then randomly, and then we would do that throughout the year. Is there consensus of the board on that?
I have questions about
Yeah.
this. I'm sorry, my computer died, so. I'm just trying to understand how it would work. So it would be a continuous process of, okay, in the fall, football season starts in the middle of August, so we start then with those students, with the draw the line approach. And then cheerleading practice starts a week later, and then we start with those students. And then chamber strings in the middle school starts the 3rd week of September, and so then we do those students. And then Dungeons and Dragons Club starts the 1st week of October, we do those students. And then, we've got intramural bowling that starts December 1st, we're gonna do is that, so it's gonna be on a rotating, all year long, we're gonna be adding new students to the
What
pool?
often happens, it's up to you, but what often happens is let's say parking pass is always a good one, because, you don't know who's gonna be parking pass until the school starts. So when we come out and do the football, cheerleaders, whatever, usually the date is set so that you'll have your rosters for that. But then we are going to be coming back for randoms and such. So if there's people for the big tests like legitimately on vacation or whatever, and there's enough of them, it's like, great, well, then we'll come back on the 20th also. We're going to be doing randoms, so a lot of times when we come back and do randoms, like, okay, whatever the number, we got 40 randoms, but we're going to add up to like 40 of this club or whatever, you know, when it comes. And we're good with that. Just tell us ahead of time, and then we'll bring the appropriate people. You know, we might just bring one for like 40, but, oh, you're going to have, you know, 75? Okay, we're going to bring 2 or 3. And so that's how we handle it that way. Some schools, at the beginning of each season, they make everybody do the draw the line test. Other schools, like the range is like huge. Other schools like, oh, you're a football player? Well, that's your draw the line. And by the way, they do make, almost all the policies are 365 now, even though we really weren't going to come out in June, but it makes it 365 because it makes sense, you know. Don't do drugs here, but these 3 months are okay. So we, mostly 365, but, you know, we can always come out as much as you want, pretty much, and test that way. And that's how most schools do it. They would say like, oh, you did the one test for football, but now you're a basketball player. Okay, you don't have to do the draw the line, but you're in the pool. And another thing that they usually do say is, going back to the 365, it's like, I'm a football player. It's like, oh, we just had our championship game. I can do what I want. It's like, no, you're still in the, until you withdraw, you're still in there. Because you don't want it to be just a seasonal thing. You know, like, yeah, we're clean during football, but hey, you know, the rest of the time we do whatever we want. So you say, no, you're still eligible until you opt out. One last thing I forgot to, I don't know if it's in the policy.
It is. Not in the policy, but it's in the,
The opting in?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody can be part of it. All they got to do is sign the paper.
So how often on average do you go, like, because I mean, our clubs are rolling. Like, we're starting new things on the weekly basis. So is there a model where you're in the school 2-3 times a month, or is it usually once a month? Like, what's the?
It's pretty much based on how you put things together. Like if it was going to be, well, Tuesday all the chess club, but then Thursday all this, it's like, yeah, we'll come to, you know, we'll come a little later and get them all, you know, at once. But otherwise, and we say that about the randoms too, like the draw the line thing, it seems so easy to say, okay, you're going to test everybody. Let's have 2 randoms. That seems about right. And then we're going to do it on this week and this week. That's fine. But don't do that every time. I suggest at least once or every year or two, come twice in 1 week, just so that when and you know what happens after we're gone, it's like, hey, they're gone, we're free now. And it's like, oh, wait, remember last year they came on Monday and Tuesday or Monday and Wednesday? So, again, it's just keep them to have one more reason not to do drugs.
No, but I get what you're saying, Michelle. I don't think, I get what he's trying to explain and what you're, and I'm trying to understand it too. Like, if there's, let's say, nobody overlaps. Let's say everyone is just football. And then let's say the next group is basketball. So like, let's say those kids don't play football. Let's just pretend. So now we do all of the football guys, but then do you come back like in 3 months and then do all the basketball players? And then like what Michelle's saying is then in between there's all these other things starting. So how do we do that where you're not, it just feels like you're going to be coming in and out a lot.
You'll give us rosters of everybody, and as far as we're concerned, I don't care what they are. Chess, football, whatever, they're just the name that is in the pool. We have a couple schools that try to do like, oh, they want to do 20% and they give us like all their sports and clubs and everything. I am not a statistician, but I believe that if you put them all in one pot, you're going to get the same percentages down the line than if you try to do each and every different one. So that's how they typically do it. It's like, okay, here's the roster. There's 1,200 kids on it. As more kids are added, either you could go into our electronic system and add names and take them off also if you wanted to. Like, oh, he quit or got injured or whatever. Or you just simply send us like an email. It's like, hey, chess club's on board, add these people, and we'll add them. And yes, you will have people that are like, oh, I play football, chess, park, et cetera, but they will each be in there only one time. It's not like if the more things you do, you're in there like 4 times. Football player that plays chess in parks and
I have one of those. But you're talking, that's the random piece. That's not I'm worried about the draw the line part.
Kyle, if I can interrupt for a second, I think the part where, as we're going through this the first year, we've got to think about, in my opinion, please add, the draw the line for sports can be clear, right? Here's the season that's starting, here's when we know the rosters, here's when we're going to do the draw the line. For groups that go throughout the year, whether we catch them right before they start the club or sometime within the year, to me personally, it doesn't matter. So I'm not saying hey, the club starts, so we've got to do the draw the line right before the club starts when they start in October or whatever. But, I would say, okay, we have our sports seasons, which have a definite start date. It helps to make sure that kids are clean before they start the sport for the reasons that were shared, and then they go into the random pool. But for those things that are year-long, whether we test them as draw the line in an October or a December or a February, as long as every kid that participates, the draw the line would be you're at least tested once in the draw the line pool. That would be the key thing.
Yes.
Any feedback on that?
A good example, actually, football players are practicing before we come out. It's whatever that date is where they finally say you can hit or whatever, that's when everybody seems to want that date for us. So they normally say you need to be tested before you compete. So, no, you can't go to the tournament or whatever because you never bothered to get tested or whatever. And we'll come out, and that's where when you add on something like, okay, we're going to come out on October 10th for a random, it's like, hey, can you add 30 kids on because the chess club is there? It's like, sure, you just tell us, and then, so it's both a random and draw the line. You see what I mean? But when we come out, the kids will just come and they'll get tested and off they go. So they won't know any different. And then what we do is we will put all that together and put not the bill and the backup and everything. So it's all encapsulated on what we did that day. And then we scan all that so we have everything. Here's everybody who was listed. Here's who showed. Here's who didn't. Here's some that had to be sent on, and et cetera. So it's all right there for us.
So if we were to go through with the high school and then the middle school model, we would set up 2 different sites for ease of access to the students.
Up to you. Yes, we have some where it's like, hey, let's all go to they have like a big football field locker room type thing or whatever. It's like, hey, we're just going to do it there, and everyone's going to come on this time. And other ones are like, yeah, well, do this one. Now we're going to do the junior high. So we can accommodate pretty much anything that you need.
It sounds like if we start with the idea of customer service, we can't have it so that it's such a bureaucratic mess that we have students who aren't able to participate in an activity because they weren't able to make it to this test at this time, et cetera. So I think based on your conversation, we can design enough flexibility to have multiple dates and make it more of like, hey, you have to get your papers in order. You have to have your measles, and when you have that, you have to have a physical. You have to have all the your eyeglass test, etc. And there are multitudes of ways to accomplish that. So if it's football, we have these 3 dates, whether it's middle school or high school or whatever. And it seems like if we just come with that idea, if we make it onerous, parents are not going to want to participate, and it's going to defeat the purpose. The purpose is not to play Barney Fife and catch people. The purpose is not to say, hey, if you figure out the pattern, you can be a drug abuser and get around the schedule. The purpose is to have another tool to help kids that are either abusing drugs, have the potential to abuse drugs, or need another tool to say no to peer pressure and all the other things that we talk about. So my advice or my counsel is Bill and John can make sure that our parents understand the rules, understand the program, and that the program is customer service enough that parents aren't going to go, all he wants to do is play chess. And you're doing the drug test. And if we fail at it, that's on us.
And we are big enough over the years. We've got 160 schools, and you're kind of central. So bottom line is we're always going by you, almost every day. So it's not going to be too hard to say, well, hey, go from there, which has been nice. The more we've grown, the easier it is, because it used to, we had some problems years ago when cell phones were first coming out more. We used to do like a route, like, oh, we're going to the school, then we'll go to that school and go to this. The second school called and said, you can't do that all the time. The kids are calling now and telling their friends, hey, they're on their way.
So, but it sounds like as long as you have the ability to keep an employee busy, I mean, you're not going to come out, hey, I need one test on Tuesday at 6 o'clock, and then I need another test on Wednesday at 4.
Yeah,
but
not so much, but yes, we especially in the beginning of the year, because that's when like the decisions are made between the school and mostly just the school and us. It's like, look, we did your big test, and now you're telling us that there's 20 kids that didn't make it. Fine, give us a date, or we'll get a date together and we'll handle that. Oh, 2 kids didn't make it. Let's put them on the first random. And that way, they're in the process, they're in the program. They just didn't happen to get the test yet, but they're scheduled for it.
Thank you, Carl. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
does that address your, I mean, because you have well-founded concerns, but I think we have a good balance
I'm just,
with that approach.
I guess what I'm confused about is nothing to do with that. I thought we were supposed to provide feedback on the language and the thing, and now I'm hearing you say, no, we're just going to let them decide. So I don't know whether I should ask my questions.
No, you should. The language, those are good questions. I don't think we have hard, concrete answers. I think we need to do the.
Well, and that's why I'm raising them, is things that I can see as challenges, and how are we thinking about them?
One of my thoughts was, and I want to make sure I understand this right, they're opting in. So we have rosters built for our like sophomores through seniors. So we could potentially capture them at the beginning of the year, right? Our winter and our spring sports. If they plan on returning, we could build our roster,
The first, like freshmen and such, are the hardest because you don't know who they are.
Right.
But then by sophomore, it's like, same list except +2 and -2.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and then
So for our draw the line in the fall, we could potentially capture those winter and spring sports if they opt in.
I'm less concerned about sports anyway than I am about all these other, like, how, are we really going to include every single club? And I don't know what that answer is. And then if
The policy right now says yes.
So, and that's when the high school can be very cumbersome. And I guess that's my concern, is how does this system, and you gave a good answer, and combined together, how does the system address the fact that we have like a lot of them have rolling entrance. Like, you might show up at one meeting, does that mean you're in the club, or does it not mean you're in the club? Like, what is the defining? And these are all, it's a lot of detail. And I guess that's I do have one more question in terms of how do you handle something. So let's say you gave an example before about ADHD medication that might trigger, and that's not uncommon. And you know that they're going to trigger it every single time. They're going to trigger it in the draw the line, they're going to trigger it in the random, and they're going to do it every single year from 6th to 12th grade. How do you manage that? Like, as a parent, I would be very annoyed if I had to keep providing the same documentation. So tell me how that works.
It'll be a little bit up to you. I keep saying that. Most of our schools now, especially with ADHD, medication has been increasing over the last number of years. So you're right, it does get to be like, oh, it's a ADHD stuff again, geez. And it does cost us a lot more, like 3 times more than the test when we get a positive, because you have to do all that stuff. So some schools, most schools actually, put us in contact with their school nurse because you're supposed to have all of that type of stuff. We have a couple of schools that say, nope, we want to go straight through the whole process. And, okay, that's fine. But that's how most schools do it, because it's just like they make like a quick call or something, and it's like, nope, they're fine. And that's because the school nurse has all that information. And then if they are popping something in that's not on there, then that's a whole other story.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Kyle as he's up there? Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Sure thing.
So I think the only other part that, 2 other parts that I just want to talk about and reiterate for the board is policy's big picture, right? The details get in, and we've shared with the board not only some forms that would have to go through final forms for people to opt into, but some of the procedures that are there. So I just wanted to use this opportunity to see, as the board members went through what is titled drug testing procedures, that gets into a lot of what Kyle talked about and the nuts and bolts of it. Were there anything that you read that you wanted to have a further discussion on, or because this would not be something that's board approved? It's like administrative guidelines, right? This is what would be developed and evolved as we go throughout. So anything that you saw that raised a flag for you that you'd like to bring to the board's attention or talk more about?
I have one more. I just wanted to hear some rationale about how the length of time the consequences were determined, because 20% of a football season might be 1 week. 20% of, I think it was 2 months for the music performances. That worry for a student of missing 1 week is very different from a student who's, and I understand there's a number of instances in there, right? But like, if you're talking about the health and the well-being of the student, distressing them for 1 week versus distressing them for 2 months is a very different conversation.
Yeah, so the way we have it, just briefly for everybody and people that are watching, so what we've broken it down is, first offense, if you get a positive test, if you follow our education and diversion program, there would be no consequences to your participation in the club. Again, the hope is to help provide parents and students with the help that they need to support. So first offense that you're positive, you could opt into education diversion program that our high school has been working on over the past year. If you refuse to do that or fail to complete it, that's when, as you say, Mrs. Bissell, it would be 20% of the season. So, longer seasons like basketball, it could be 4 games, it could be 1 game, it could be 2, whatever it may be. The idea of 2 months, if I remember when I did the math, 20% of 8 to 9 months or 10 months, whatever it was, would, I think it was 10 months, because basically July and August, I ballparked that 2 months would be the part, and that's how I got to 2 months for the parking passes and the extracurriculars and those things. And also, if you look in that range, now I didn't specifically look at the concert schedule, but when we're taking a look at this, they would be denied participation. So a lot of our clubs meet once a month. A lot of our music groups are performing once in a couple month period. So if you take a look at actually what they would miss, it was as close to equivalent as you could get without being so convoluted when you're talking about so many different clubs or so many different groups. So that was the rationale behind it. Second offense would go up to 50%, be the same as the first one, and then there's a couple other criteria. If you're a leader in that group, you'd lose that for a calendar year and required to be a part of the randoms. And then, as Kyle said, if it's a third offense, you'd lose that privilege for a year. And then if it's a fourth offense, we would say we're done for your participation in that piece of it. So if the board can come up or have any ideas on how we take parking and extra and co-curriculars and athletics and try to make them as equitable as possible, that was the starting point I had. But again, nothing's perfect, so if you have other ideas, be more than happy to entertain them. Yeah.
The one feedback I had for consideration was, and we talked about, again, the policy talks about the consequences are to the extracurricular activity. They're not to the school day. And there was discussion of, the coach could make decisions on whether a student with an infraction can still participate or practice and things like that. And what I'm afraid of is having different applications, people looking at it differently, et cetera. So I'd like to suggest, if there's consensus, that it's the principal, the principal at the high school and at the middle school that makes those decisions, so that we're avoiding differences of application.
That reminded me of another question. It references in there, I can't remember the exact language, but the person that's going to be managing this. Do we know what position that is or who that might be?
That's something that we've talked about. So but we haven't finalized specifically who that would be. So it will be either one of our building administrators, inclusive of our athletic directors. So those would be the pool of the group that we would be looking at. And as Kyle shared, one of the reasons that I like Great Lakes is one of the questions you asked in May is how do we make sure that this doesn't add such a burden on the school district that we can't do it effectively? As you've heard, they take on a lot of the burden. We simply provide the pool. We bring the kids to the restroom, and we enact the consequences when he tells us there's a positive result. So that's about the least amount of lift as I could see that you could do in anything like this. So I've talked a little bit with Bill about it, and so we would be deciding between the administrative team at both buildings who would be the liaison to the testing company.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other feedback on the documents?
I do want to highlight the self-referral portion of it because I think that's important.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for our parents to know. Sometimes you just need that aid to say, I need help. And whether it's an uncomfortable conversation for a student and the parent or a conversation the parent doesn't want to have with the student, I was glad to see that. It's real, for me, it's very important. This is not intended to try to, catch people. And apply consequences. It's to be a tool to help with behavior. And I think we all agree that it's a growing problem.
Mm-hmm. So the last thing just to put on the board's radar, if there's no other questions or feedback on the kind of administrative guideline documents, is as we come to the August 1st meeting to take consideration as when we would like to start this. So, I know Kyle does this, but I would feel strongly that we need to have a parent meeting prior to initiating. I know you offered to do that as well, but I think it would be important to offer a parent meeting. And I think, Kyle, as we talked, you said, once we provide you with the information that is needed, a couple weeks.
It's more of just scheduling,
Yeah.
like once you give us the roster, okay, we're good to go.
Yeah.
Gotta find a slot to put you.
So there's not, in terms of besides finding a date, there's a pretty quick turnaround. So start thinking about when you would like to get this going once we get policy decisions made. And obviously, we would have to get documents in final forms to opt in. Those documents would need to go out. We need to give enough time for people to complete those documents, things of that nature. So as we're possibly with a pending board decision on the policy, a kind of transitional fall with that. We just need guidance on that start date. Mr. Mickle or the board, any other discussion on this right now?
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kyle. Moving on to other items for consideration under business services. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that the Board of Education approves the annual membership renewal and safety program with the Ohio Schools Council for an amount not to exceed $2,763.74. Next, under number 2, be resolved upon my recommendation that the schedule of rental fees for direct and indirect costs be approved as it appears in the exhibit. This is an annual consideration of the board. There's been no changes to the actual rental fees because they're still comparable to the area market. We did add, under some of the personnel costs, we did add a maintenance row since they've got to cover some of the outside facilities, and they're paid at a different rate than custodians. We added the addition of scoreboard operator for those applicable facilities, and it's the same rate as the sound lighting technician as we use for the auditoriums. And then we did update the personnel rate for the cafeteria staff to reflect current rates. So that's the business service report, unless there's any questions. Moving on to curriculum, number 1, be it resolved upon my recommendation that the district pays for students to participate in Admetum Solutions secondary online curriculum at an approximate cost of $250 per student per month for the 24-25 school year. This provides some of our online and credit recovery curriculum for our students. Under number 2, we have an out-of-state trip that permission be granted to the Strongsville High School boys and girls cross-country teams to travel to Goshen, Kentucky to participate in the Rumble Through the Jungle 2024 cross-country meet, September 6th to 7th. Transportation is via motor coach, and lodging and meals will be paid by the participating students, as well as proceeds from fundraisers. Items 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, all are the annual approvals of our various handbooks, with 3 being for the early learning preschool, then the elementary school in 4, middle school in 5, high school in 6, as in the athletic handbook in 7. Any questions on any curriculum items? Under Student Services, be resolved upon my recommendation that the Strongsville Board of Education enters into a contract with the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio for admission of students with visual, audiology, and/or hearing impaired services for the 24-25 school year. And number 2, be resolved upon my recommendation that the board enters into an agreement with PSI affiliates in the amount of $82,996.20 for social worker services to service students at Strongsville City Schools district-wide. So as the board knows, we have 2 social workers that work for our district. One is paid through the general fund as one of our employees. The second is paid through PSI as a contracted service. Any questions on student services? And with that, I'll turn it over to Jenny for the Human Resource Report.
Thank you. Under Human Resources, I have the following items for your consideration. Under number 1, we have the resignation of a certificated staff. Under 2, retirement for non-certificated staff. Under 3, appointments for certificated staff. Under 4, appointments for certificated supplemental contracts. Under 5, appointments for non-certificated supplemental contracts. 6, appointments for extended school year for our non-certificated staff. Under 7, appointments for KidsLink summer program for non-certificated staff. 8, appointments for kindergarten readiness assessment consultants. Number 9, appointments for Ohio English Language Proficiency Screener. Under 10, appointments for summer learning for 2024 for our both certificated and non-certificated staff. 11, we have appointments for our testing consultants. 12, we have athletic game worker pay rates. 13, salary placement for administrative staff. Under 14, we have a change of title for administrative staff. Does this require a vote, George? So let me read this one. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the employment contract be amended and approved to reflect the following change of title as detailed in the exhibit effective August 1st, 2024.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
and the motion carries.
Under 15, we have our security services in conjunction with our Strongsville Police Department. So this is continuing to provide security services to school buildings for the 24-25 school year. Under 16, stipends for our instructional coaches. 17, substitute rates for certificated staff. 18, volunteers for coaches. And finally, under 19, we have a recommendation to continue to provide our service agreement with the renewal of Works International to provide employee safe program and student watch program for ongoing services for the 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27 school years at the cost of $39,789 per year. And that concludes my report, unless you have questions.
Any questions for Jenny? Hearing none. Next is adoption of consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of the consent calendar at this point of the agenda means that all items appearing in this agenda denoted as type action consent, which is the consent calendar, are adopted by one single motion unless requested otherwise. Do I have any otherwise? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
and the motion carries. Superintendent timely information, Cameron, you have none, correct?
Nothing new at this month.
That was really timely.
When does school start? I don't want to hear about it.
There actually was a question on Facebook
Yes.
today about it, so if you could remind us of the dates, that would be great.
August 19th is school for started the school year for grades 1 to 9, and then the next day brings in 10 through 12 in kindergarten, and the day after starts preschool. Yep.
Meeting notification, our annual board retreat is Tuesday, July 23rd at 6:30 PM in this building. Our next work session is Thursday, August 1st, 7 PM in this building. And our next regular Board of Education meeting is Thursday, August 22nd at 7 PM, which will be after school has started. Board of Education other, do we have any others? Hearing none. We do not have need for executive session. And so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Good, you didn't bring your jacket, good.
I know, what was I going to do?
enthusiastic motion by Ms. Stavcek and Mrs. Cobain.
Well, Mitchell's closes at 10:30, and I'm going to get a milkshake because they only
You
have chocolate
surprised
chip
me.
in
I
July.
thought we were having an executive session, so this was a surprise. Were you just going to wait? Was it a gift?
Any other discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
we are adjourned. Thank you very much for your attention and have a nice evening.